So today I'm joined by Elisha Goldstein, who is a mindfulness teacher and expert based over in California. So hi, Elisha.
Hi, good to meet you. Good to
Y-
be with you.
And you, and you. Um, the first thing I'd like to do for people who aren't aware of you, could you sort of take us a bit through your story, a bit about kind of, for instance, how your life was before you discovered mindfulness and so on.
Well, it's interesting. I grew up with a dad who's a rabbi and a mom who eventually became a psychologist. So I kind of like molded the two into like a mindfulness-based psychologist, I guess, in some ways. But I grew up product of divorced parents, like many people, and through that time, if I fast forward to my early 20s when I kind of moved to San Francisco during the dot-com boom, and I was working hard but got caught up in a really fast lifestyle of use and abuse with drugs and alcohol, and but because I was doing well in my corporate job, I didn't think it was really kind of a problem, but something was kind of always gnawing at me. And at one point, it became so bad that I had kind of a family intervention, and I was suggested to go away to this place for a month, which wasn't like a rehab place, but it was more of it was actually like a Jewish retreat. And my parents said, like, you can go there, and if you don't like it, you can leave after a day, but we'd like you just to see what it's like to kind of take this time out. So I went there and like challenged spirituality, challenged my religion, challenged even the idea of God and all this stuff. And with that, like, came in touch with this guy who was teaching more of a kind of Kabbalistic slash also mindfulness related orientation. And all of a sudden, things started kind of making a little more sense to me. The way things were defined were a little different. And then he introduced this idea of eating an orange with mindfulness. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I mean, I've read a little bit about it, but I've never really practiced it. And so he said, well, just trust me and allow your experience to kind of be your guide. And so I, ate this orange and, looking at it and kind of peeling it, watching the zest spray off of it and kind of put it in my mouth. And it was like inevitably the tastiest orange I've ever tasted in my entire life. And all of a sudden he said, well, how does your body feel? And I felt really relaxed. And he goes, what would it be like to have more of this in your life? I said, great. It would be great. And so I started kind of like even kind of going. I left that place and kind of started going deeper into mindfulness, and inevitably sort of relapsed into my old ways. Which, by the way, is a really important thing that I hope you and I will talk about, which is like the real impact of our environment on our ability to succeed in the things we want to do in life, and how they have us kind of naturally kind of cue us and back into old habits, or cue us into the habits that we want to create. So that's what happened to me. It kind of cued me into kind of my old habits. However, I did plant a seed that was really fertile, and the ground was really fertile for me. So inevitably, I was able to change my environment and kind of find a school. I was interested in the field of psychology, but not just like general psychology, one that integrated more of a sort of a spiritual backing in some way. And I found this school called the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology down in Palo Alto and California. And they really integrated mindfulness into their curriculum. And so I inevitably went there, and I started learning about mindfulness. And I'd studied a year of this guy Sri Aurobindo, who was an Eastern teacher, and inevitably came to this sense that I want to help myself and other people recognize what I called more sacred moments in daily life. And I wanted to put research to it, because it's what you do when you're in your doctoral program. And what I realized was in order to help people create those moments or be aware of those moments, you had to have awareness. You had to have presence. And so what was the most researched program out there? Because again, I had to integrate research, which was mindfulness-based stress reduction. So for many of your listeners, they're likely familiar with this program, 8-week program started by John Kabat-Zinn, has the most science behind it than any other mindfulness. That's where most of the neuroscience is. A lot of that is based on that program, because it was the first one of its kind to come out in that way. And so I started becoming trained. I started doing that program, became trained inevitably as a teacher in that program with Bob Stahl. As I'm going through and doing my research, finding that you can indeed help people create sacred moments. And it does have an impact on stress and well-being, and the connection, the glue between all of it, people's experiences, when they start to have more of a moment of mindfulness And when they connect with something that's meaningful in their life, that's their experience is one of real connection. And connection is the foundation of well-being, of happiness, I'd say. And so that's what I found. Inevitably went with Bob Stahl, and we created a software program based on mindfulness-based stress reduction with a company that went away because they were ahead of their time. But that created the bones for the book, a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook, which was the first book that I wrote, and wrote with Bob Stahl, who currently right now is in China, teacher training teachers in China to teach mindfulness in China, which is really wonderful. And so, that then led to the more of a version that has smaller bites, like the Now Effect, which inevitably I became interested more as a psychologist, more in anxiety and depression, and found that the integration of self-compassion is really key in that, and also play, and that led to the book Uncovering Happiness, and then MBSR Everyday, and then now the full rounding it all, the full understanding of really the impact. We can do a lot of work internally, but what we're missing typically today is the environment to help us succeed, if I can use that word, succeed in being the way we want to be, or engaging the types of things we want to, or the attitudes in life we want to incorporate just into our daily sense of mind, and interaction and relationships. And so right now what I'm trying to do is proliferate and create environments that make mentorship available to people regularly, not just by me, but by people, letting them know of people in the woodwork in their area, or live online or something like that, and also to create more communities of like-minded people that help work on the brain's implicit biases and decision-making to naturally cue a person to want to practice, or to remember to practice, or feel more comfortable practicing and integrating mindfulness into their daily life. And this, I think, is the Achilles heel of mindfulness today, is the lack of community and mentorship. And if we can create more of that, it's going to be a lot easier for people to integrate this work into their lives.
Sure, yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. Um, I'm quite interested that you talk about working with psychology and so on, and integrating mindfulness. Is that an accepted thing within the establishment in America?
Oh, geez. Well, it started with, in the chronic pain clinics, when, I think, I would say, well, this has been happening for quite a while, but more spiritually based earlier in the 60s and 70s,
Mm.
and with the rise of humanistic psychology, and then this whole transpersonal psychology, which came out, which said, oh, well, hey, there's a spiritual element to psychology too. But then what happened in 2000, positive psychology came out and said, let's put some science to this stuff. And then at the very same time, when John Kabat-Zinn, that his 8-week program started kind of exploding. 1991 really was a Bill Moyer special, but that made it explode out here in the U.S. And then in 2003, Richie Davidson and John put together a study that had people go through an 8-week program and studied what's happening in their brains as they go through from beginning to end and after. And what they found was there's this left prefrontal activation that happens. So after that, there became this great acceptance in the field of medicine, and also in the field of psychotherapy, because psychotherapy typically sometimes follows medicine in some way. And so it's a huge proliferation, not just in the U.S., but all over the world right now. I mean, it has a huge growing following in the U.K. and also in Australia, and it's spreading out throughout South America more. Because it's a natural fit for psychotherapy, because psychotherapists, our intention is to be present, to be aware of our own feelings, while we're doing psychotherapy, but also to help people with emotion regulation. And mindfulness inevitably becomes a really wonderful emotion regulation tool, but that's just like the surface of it. Inevitably, it becomes this great sense of feeling comfortable in our own skin with whatever's arising, with this real understanding that things kind of come and go. Because when the brain gets hijacked and we start feeling anxious or start feeling depressed, and gets us caught in this, what I call this depression or anxiety loop of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and behaviors that kind of feed on each other, become kind of a trauma complex. We can kind of become aware of that, soften the body, having more of a cognitive flexibility and understanding that this is something that's impermanent. I can be curious about it versus get hijacked by it, and so inevitably becomes a wonderful source of emotion regulation and insight. And so the field of psychotherapy has really grabbed onto it and integrated it, that and self-compassion and compassion-based practices, because those kind of create a source of connection within and without, which again is a fundamental strength of feeling well. And so, yeah, there's a good marriage there.
Um, you talk about connection and the need for communities and so on. Do you think do you think this stuff is getting through to the people who need it?
Well, if like the emails that I get regularly could be part of a qualitative study to see, what are people getting what they need. There's a lot of people who are getting great benefit from it.
Mm.
Of course, when you ask that question, it kind of makes my mind go in a couple different directions. The people that need it is kind of a subjective question, because I could think,
Yeah, yeah.
in the current political climate, there's a lot of people I think who need it who are not going to self-select into it, um, and some might not, and so, but you start with your core, and there's a growing core
Mm.
of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are brothers and sisters and whatnot, and have cousins and colleagues and this. And so you see the verticals that it's going into. I mean, mindfulness has become really strong in the business world now, and a lot of corporations. I created a 12-week program for Aetna, which out here in the U.S. is a really large healthcare company, and thousands of people have taken this 12-week live online program called Mindfulness at Work, and it won a National Business Award. And eMindful delivers it with Aetna through their corporate clients and beyond into a lot of other healthcare companies as well. And so it's going through businesses, and Google and Apple and all of them kind of have now like meditation rooms. So it's going through the verticals of education. Mindful Schools has done a tremendous job training teachers. So and there's many other organizations doing that too. So there's a vertical of that. Psychotherapists, the vertical of that. Physicians, the vertical of that. And so we're seeing all these verticals kind of happening, going deeper into specific interests and areas, which I think is also important, because let's say a lot of business executives, are like, well, I don't know about this mindfulness stuff type of thing. But if they see their colleagues doing it, and they see that it's good for stress and reduction and reduction of healthcare costs, that's like an in some way. And then they can have like-minded people that they say, oh, okay, this is how it works with my business. This is how it works. And then that inevitably bleeds into, oh, and it also works in my family life. Oh, I see. As a parent, I can be more aware of myself. I can put this down a little bit more potentially, and see that the way I act and behave influences my kids, because they're just going to kind of mimic me, and I can become maybe less reactive, and then I can also kind of bring these skills to them and within my relationship. My wife and I wrote this column in Mindful Magazine a while ago called "Raising a Mindful Family," and we've put on family retreats in Costa Rica, and one coming up this summer in Santa Cruz. This new beautiful retreat center called 1440 Multiversity, which is going to host all kinds of different retreats there,
Right.
and that's in California. So it's going into so many sectors. So when you ask the question, are the people who are needing it getting it? Um, I would say, yeah, a lot of people who are needing it are getting it, and it naturally has to. There's a lot of people who are needing it who are not getting it. But there's more and more people going into sectors of inner cities and prisons, and I think Jack Cornfield just went out to Chad, where a school in Chad, one of the poorest areas in Africa, um, are are interested in integrating mindfulness into their curriculum. So slowly, yeah, slowly, and quite a bit actually. At the same time, a lot of people who are needing it are getting it. Yeah, and you
Mm.
guys out there in Everyday Mindfulness are part of this pool that are really helping proliferate this. And you have a really great following too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I suppose the tenet of my question was I live near Brighton in England, which is quite a similar kind of place to California in the sense that there's
Ah,
quite a sort of
progressive.
yeah, progressive. I suppose that's a good word. Yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of a word there, so you dug me out.
Yeah.
Cheers. Um, But is it so easy if you're in like the middle of like Nowheresville in Alabama or something? And I suppose this
Got it.
leads me onto the internet really, and the relationship between mindfulness and technology. Um,
Good question.
yeah, you seem to be very savvy with all that, I must say, and so I'm quite interested in. There's a sort of a kind of paradox here, isn't there? On the one hand, everywhere you go, you see people staring at their phones, but on the other hand, we can use that and help them to sort of stare at something that might be of use to them. All of which is a very roundabout way of coming round to this course you've got, a course in mindful living. Can
Yeah, so this was part of my investigation and research too, and saying like, well, how do we mentorship or community is not like necessarily readily available in certain areas of the world. And I have to say, even in LA, where it's you know there's so many opportunities to engage mindfulness, a lot of people don't necessarily come out of their house to go to a sitting group, and there's not, or something like that, or to learn mindfulness. Some people do, but there's, so to find a mentor is kind of really hard. And so yeah, so with this, you and me right now on this video, I think that is a real stepping stone or an opportunity to still feel kind of part of a community and connect with people. And if you could have, like, let's say, access to a mentor, that, what I know, in order to create change, and we've seen this in a lot of different areas, whether it's fitness or diet or whether it's learning something new, we need mentorship. We absolutely need that. And we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and learn things ourselves, but nothing's going to be more effective than having a regular commitment with somebody else that you're learning from, in some way, are able to kind of knock apart, like, well, I'm having trouble with this. What do you suggest with that? That's going to really catalyze and facilitate any change and integration with anything. And then to have other people around you that you're regularly in contact with that are also doing this very similar thing is going to play on the implicit biases of your mind. You see this person and you're inspired by them, and want to practice. So with the technology, initially the version of this course in mindful living, which is a 6-month program, that's kind of a hybrid. There's a live component, which is with me. 2 weeks later, there's a live component, which is with a smaller mentorship group with a trained mindful faculty. And then there's accountability pods that check in with each other weekly, more of like an online type of check-in, and then meet with each other live online monthly. So you have like this kind of trinity of support, in some ways, which I think technology will facilitate a greater sense of integration, because you have more touch points with people, real people. It's relational now, than in just taking like technology. I think the most basic way, which is somewhat helpful but not helpful, is taking like an online course that is kind of unidirectional, where you're just learning from somebody, with a video type of thing, and you kind of do it at your own pace and that kind of thing. I think that's not quite as effective as having relationships that are involved in this. Now, the vision of this, just so we see, because I also am a big believer in offline um, connection and support as well,
mm,
is to inevitably build enough people, let's say, in an area that's more remote, where there's enough people where they can eventually take it offline as well. And so, that's going to take time to kind of build that up, but inevitably that will happen, where there's going to be mentors that are going to be available locally in people's areas, even if they're a little bit more remote. And there's going to be enough people in there that they can inevitably take that offline and do kind of like day long sometimes and things like that. And in specific interests of business and psychotherapy and medicine and education and that kind of thing. But inevitably for what's available now, this can be an incredible support. I think the highest form of integration for most people. And it's usually only available in professional training programs. If you look at a professional training program for mindfulness, they'll have a training curriculum, regular mentorship, and they'll have support amongst the people who are training. But that's only available for that, and it's usually thousands and thousands of dollars. And so, like, why can't everyday people, playing on your name, I guess, Everyday Mindfulness,
yeah.
why can't everyday people also have access to that for a much lower cost? And I think that's what I'm trying to proliferate and create in the world. I mean, currently in our program. I mean, it just doesn't start till January 10th, but registration's been open for the last month. I mean, we have a number of people in there that are from all sides of this country, of the U.S. We have a lot of people in the U.K. that have joined. We have a number of people in Australia. We have a whole new South American contingency that's kind of coming alive there, and other smaller and a smaller amount of people in like more disparate areas of the world. But people are going to come together and learn with each other and learn and learn not just from the mentors, which is true, and from me, but also from each other. And it's already happening, and the program hasn't even started yet. So I think, yeah, it's powerful. Technology can provide it if it's done well, and it's done in a way that facilitates relationships. That's the key, because the social cues is the key to actually allowing us to kind of make a change and igniting our brain's implicit decision making, which is what we want to do. We want to impact our brain's reactivity so that the reactivity is, yes, I want to go do this. Oh, yeah, this is really good for me. I'm wanting to do this. And there's nothing more powerful than social cues for that.
Right. So, what's to give people a taste of the course? What's inside it? What happens when they join it?
So here's the thing. In regular 6 to 8 week courses, what I've found is that are out there, because I've taught a number of them for a really long time, is that there's not really enough time to prepare the mind to make it fertile enough for like a real integration of the work. So you're going to get a feeling of it, you get a taste of it, in these programs, which are wonderful, and they have some science behind them. Typically, the science shows that after the 8 weeks, the benefits tend to trail off because the community's gone. And so in the first 6 weeks of this program, what I've set up a training in is teaching people to really actively relax their nervous system. Because when we're more relaxed, we learn better, we're more efficient learners, and we tend to integrate information better. So we start to kind of work with kind of practices and play in some way and with each other around integrating a way to kind of really create more mastery around relaxing the nervous system. Then we move into training ourselves to focus a little bit better. Linda Stone out here in LA has coined this term because of this thing called continuous partial attention. So in other words, it's a fraction of attention.
Yeah.
So there it is, right? And so we've trained this kind of continuous partial attention because we're paying attention to so many things at a time. And that doesn't facilitate learning very well. We learn better when we can pay attention. So we start by helping people learn how to actively relax the nervous system, and then how to kind of pay attention. And so I provide supportive ways for learning how to kind of pay attention for a little bit longer periods of time. And then we go into mindfulness. And then we go deep into self-compassion and self-acceptance work. And then we go into, and which has a tinge of forgiveness, which is, by the way, so important for coming back on track with anything we want to do in life. Then we move into inspiring and being more aware of like the good in life, like joy and gratitude, and like really touching into that individually and relationally in our lives, which really supports resiliency during difficult times. Then we go deeper into compassion work, which is around connection and purpose in life. And then we go more into a greater level of acceptance and not being kind of caught in the storm. And because we've built up all these strengths that we can just learn how to kind of have a greater level of acceptance with whatever is there in any given moment. So those are kind of the topics that go through all the 6 months. Every month, every 2 weeks, there's a new kind of formal practice that's introduced, and people have an option to do a 10 or 20 or 30-minute version of it to meet them wherever they're at. There's a lot of play throughout the entire curriculum. There's even every 2 weeks, there's even music that's meant to kind of inspire certain attitudes. So we integrate music throughout the program. So we kind of have the formal work, the kind of more playful aspects of it, and the real connection of community between me, the mentors, and all the people that are currently involved.
So it sounds like there's more than mindfulness going on in the course, really.
Yeah, I'd say mindfulness and all that. What mindfulness has come to mean is come to be this really umbrella term, which has all the auxiliary components of like self-compassion and compassion and all these things. But yeah, if we're to separate it, mindfulness is just really this ability to be aware and intentionally pay attention to this moment with a sense of engaged curiosity. But we're teaching ways to actively relax the nervous system and focus, which are not mindfulness. And then we're teaching mindfulness, and then we're teaching, all these different compassion-based works of self-compassion and enjoying gratitude and compassion and this sense of kind of equanimity or balance, that's there, right? So it really brings you through quite a curriculum. To me, this will facilitate a much greater sense of integration and connection. If someone's really wanting to integrate this into their lives, this is the fullest program that I'm aware of in the secular world. Um, and uh, so we're going to see. We're going to see.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and very best of luck.
Yeah.
Is this something that you've put together completely yourself then? This
Yeah, I mean,
course?
I've had a help of a lot of people in this. I've had some really great program managers behind me that are, supporting this curriculum. And it's taken about a year and a half or 2 years to build. So this has been in the works for quite a while now. Everyone I talk to who's been doing this mindfulness, all the teachers who have been doing this for quite a long time, all recognize the real need for a greater network of mentorship and support, a greater network of something that's going to help really people create more kind of communities. I'm aware of how the brain works, and I'm aware of its implicit decision making. And I know that that's why these 6 to 8 week programs are wonderful. Inevitably see a great fall off because it's not enough time for people to really change the way their brains automatically making decisions of whether I want to practice or not practice, or whether I want to kind of have this mindfulness attitude or not. And so you see this kind of relapsing that happens just into everyday life. But a good seed has been created, during that time. Most people who have come into this program have some experience with mindfulness already. Some people are brand new to it, but a lot of people have also been through different mindfulness programs, and but they want something deeper. They want a greater commitment. They want to really give themselves a chance to really integrate this into their lives in a real way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I first did the 8 week course, my big feeling at the end of it was I didn't want it to stop,
Right.
and a few other people have told me that as well. And I think 6 months is yeah, that's kind of quite an attractive proposition. I would have thought for a lot of people who
Yeah.
people who want to kind of a deeper practice, I suppose.
Right. And people will do it in their different ways. Some people will just integrate like 10-minute practices, for themselves. Other people will want to kind of integrate the 30. Some people will move from 10 to 30-minute practices. Some people will fall off of the practices, and we kind of really talk about that, and that's really important. And we'll maybe just integrate a lot more of the informal work. But 6 months of the informal work would be really powerful as well in creating the community and those relationships. I mean, my greatest hope for this thing is that people actually form relationships, even online relationships with other people that are long enough that the connection of those relationships sustain past that time. And inevitably, at the end of this program, the graduates of this program are going to have the opportunity to become sponsors, like in AA or like in Alcoholics Anonymous, like these types of sponsors to support people who are in the program. There's going to be kind of attractive offers to support them wanting to be a sponsor, but it's a very purposeful endeavor to do it, and they'll stay connected to the program and keep it alive in their lives at the same time, which inevitably facilitates their own well-being, their own happiness, their own sense of connection, their own implicit um, uh, uh, reactivity towards mindfulness and compassion-based work in their life.
Sounds like you've really thought this through.
Oh
um,
yeah, it's very well thought through. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And anybody who wants to look into this course, what can you tell people the URL?
Yeah, it's just a course in mindfulliving.com. So it's a course in mindfulliving.com. Or if you just go to elishagoldstein.com, it'll also be the first image you'll see there too. And I know like we've been right now running a kind of a holiday special, which is like $96 off the full price. So that's going to be happening through December 21st. Not quite sure when this is going to air. If this airs before that.
It'll air before that, but for
Okay.
anybody watching later, we're talking about 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, 2016. Right. This launches January 10th, 2017. So the holiday special will go through December 21st. But feel free if you have any questions to engage me. You can always write me directly, or you can write hello at acourseinmindfulliving.com. Any questions, but there's a whole FAQ section on the webpage that answers a ton of questions about the course as well. But again, there's hundreds of people in the course right now. We have mentors all over the world that are waiting to meet their groups, and we're capping it as well. So we have probably, at this point, just a number of spaces left, and so we're going to cap it because we're not going to let this explode to a lot of people. There's only going to be a certain amount of people that are going to go in this round of the program right now. So it's a really special time to be part of this first group that's actually, even kind of moving through this really rich opportunity.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, Elisha. I've found that absolutely fascinating, and I find your course actually. I find your course ideas absolutely fascinating as well. So yeah, very best of luck with it, and very best of luck to anybody listening who goes on to enjoy and benefit from the course as well. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you for all the work that you do as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Cheers.